All right, good morning, and welcome to the 43rd CALLERLAB Convention in Norfolk, Virginia. Today is Monday, March 21st, and this is a session called Divert Your Thinking. My name is Kris Jensen, and I will serve as moderator. Our panelists today are Corben, Geis, and Henry Grissett, Jr. Just to introduce our panelists, so that you know who we have here. Henry started calling in 1994, started dancing in 1994, and calling in 1998. He joined CALLERLAB in 1999 and calls basic through C2. All right. Corben, or Corey, which do you prefer?
Whatever you want, but just call me late for dinner.
Yeah.
Corey's fine.
All right. Corey has been calling since 1985. Hello.
She said 18.
And has been a member of CALLERLAB since 1994. And he told me that means he began calling at 9 months old.
It's true.
He is past vice chairman of Callers in Schools and the Education Committee. He has been recording for Silver Sounds Records with Jack O'Leary since 1996, and before that he called with Chicago Country with Jack Berg. Corey also writes a column as well as illustrates the cartoons for the American Square Dance magazine. Bow and Swing. Yes, So is that why he's here?
I have to be good.
Okay. Bow and Swing, Florida's Square Dance magazine, and the Northeast Square Dancer. He also draws cartoons, of course, as you saw last night. Corey also writes a column. Oh, I already did that. Sorry. He calls basic through A2 and instructs line dancing. His favorite square dance groups are his wheelchair square dancers and his handicapable Special Olympics Club. He has been teaching in the parochial elementary schools in his area for many years. He and Tom Miller have two clubs, the Chimrock Squares and their DVD Workshops Club. Okay, so I'm going to just talk a little bit. I'm thinking they had this panel set up for representatives of various groups with areas of diversity. So this is the second year for this session. I would highly recommend listening to last year's session. Clark Baker did an excellent job of gathering information from callers about diversity and presenting that. So listen to last year's session. There was much useful information. The major takeaway, I thought, from that session was if you want to attract people from various groups that aren't currently dancing, square dancing, or are in limited numbers, you need to gather a group of people from that group and teach them to square dance, basically. And the reasoning behind that is people like associating with people who are like them. You know, we like to be with people like us. And so the way to build diversity is to get more people in the activity who are like the people that you want to attract. That's a chicken and the egg problem. But that seems to be what is most effective, and what was some discussion from last year's session. So this year's panel consists of callers who have called and recruited for clubs for groups that are underrepresented in square dancing. I got into square dancing because of our gay square dance group in Albuquerque. I started dancing in 1990 and calling in 1991. The square dance group in Albuquerque is the Wild Bunch, the gay square dance group. Gay square dancing got started in the late 70s and really started growing in the early 80s. And the way it started was some people who had danced in other groups sort of thought it would be fun to square dance. There was the gay rodeo scene was going on, and So there was some interest in country western dancing and other kinds of dancing, and some people had square danced, and they said this would be fun. Let's start square dancing. Clubs developed in Seattle and San Francisco early on, and it spread across the country basically by people from those clubs. Again, they got a small group of people who were interested in the activity together and taught them to square dance. And then people from those groups started spreading across the country. Somebody, I believe from Seattle, came to Albuquerque and said, we need a square dance group here, and started it by recruiting friends and started dancing. So it grew across the country, probably experienced its greatest growth explosion in the early to mid 80s. I got into it about 10 years after it had started. So basically, what's the model of marketing for the GLBT community, or for in a diverse community? One, I would say, is figure out what need the activity fulfills. In square dancing, originally, I think gay square dancing got started because people didn't want to go to the bars. They were trying to avoid that scene and looking for another social outlet. And so gay square dancing filled that need very well at that time. Get a leader or a caller involved who is preferably a member of the community or associated with that community, and make it fun right away. Get people involved and make it fun. Recruit your friends and get them dancing. And then make your group visible in the targeted community. Okay, that's the marketing part. And in gay square dancing, in the early days, they tried to make themselves as visible as possible, dancing in gay pride parades, gay rodeo. They were everywhere. They outreached through the various gay publications at the time. Marketing or advertising consisted a lot of, one, saying it's not like the other kind of square dancing. You know, we don't require costumes. They were separating themselves from the bad image that other square dancing has. And then marketing it as a fun thing to do outside of the bars, you know, meet people and have a good time. They also marketed the fact that it was a nationwide and even international activity, so that you could join it and then you could go all around the country and dance with all the clubs that were around the country. So the fact that there were a lot of gay clubs was helpful in marketing. And, you know, these days we're having trouble marketing square dancing. It's we're not getting the people in as much as we used to. I think, you know, people, as we've become more integrated into the overall society, we have less need for a separate group. I know in Boston, Tech Squares sort of alleviated the need for Boston Uncommons, which was the gay club, because Tech Squares is already very diverse. And they just, you know, you could go there and dance and be comfortable, and so we don't really need a separate club in Boston. In other areas, we still do, and it's still, the gay clubs serve a purpose, and also serve a purpose in the straight community as we've become more and more dancing in the larger community. We have provided a place in that community for people who maybe don't fit the mold in the other clubs to come and dance with us. So in Albuquerque, we have people who are more liberal, shall we say, who like dancing with the gay clubs. And we get single women who are more comfortable with the gay club because they don't have to have a partner. And people who don't like the outfits come and dance with us, although the outfits are no longer a big deal in most of the clubs in Albuquerque. So that's my takeaway from this, is get a group of people, start them dancing, and grow. And I'd also like to say that in gay square dancing, we've had our own issues with diversity. So we have, in the early days, it was mostly men. So how do you attract women into the activity? Well, they worked pretty hard at that. I was lucky in Albuquerque, the club was already pretty much 50-50 when I joined. But in a lot of areas, it was mostly men. And when a woman or a couple of women would come to the club, they would look around and go, well, not anybody here like me. I guess I'll find another activity. And so the groups worked pretty hard in getting women involved and making them comfortable. The gay clubs have been concerned and interested in attracting people of color. And there has been not real formal outreach, but a real encouragement of the people of color that we do have in the group. So at our international convention every year, we have specialty tips. We have times in the schedule where people of different interests can get together. And so in the past there have been people of color tips, where all of the people who identify as a person of color, including my wife, get together and dance, and it just feels good. It's celebrating that diversity. Has in the past been a Asian Pacific Islander specialty tip, so people get together and do that, and it allows you to see the other people and dance with them, and then you go off and dance with everybody else. But there's also has always been a women's tip, where the women all get together, because we're still a minority in that context. So that's what I have to say about gay square dancing. If you're interested in other ways that we market ourselves, ask questions later. Right now I'd like to pass the microphone over to Henry Grissett to talk about his experiences with square dancing.
Good morning. As you could say, well, the first thing I'd like to say, how many of you are familiar with Star Trek? You know where I'm going with that. You must know of Mr. Spock and the Vulcan, his hand salute, but it also meant the Vulcan Edict, which stood for infinite diversity and infinite combinations. That's what that was all about. I guess what I should start with, which is not known too much over the country, is that square dancing in the black community in the Los Angeles area got started in the mid 60s, with a couple by the name of Art and Daisy Daniels. Art became a caller. Daisy became a square dance teacher and cure. And Art, I'm not sure how they got interested in square dancing, but they gained an interest, and he started teaching square dancing in parks and recreation in the Los Angeles area. And generally these were in the African American communities. And so he founded a club called the Dudes and Dames, and it eventually grew. And into the 70s, as the club grew, some of the members decided they wanted it to be a dancer-run club instead of a caller-run club. And so there came a battle over the name of the organization, which actually took them to court. And the upshot of that was that the court decided that they would be two clubs. One would be the Daniels Dudes and Dames. The other would be Dudes and Dames Incorporated. Those were the first two that started in the LA area. And later on, another club, which Sharon is my partner, by the way, Sharon Golden, sitting over. I think she's in front of me. By the way, I should tell you that if you don't know me, I am blind. And I still called. Anyway, back to this. Into the late 70s, the Bachelors and Bachelorettes International was starting affiliations around the LA area, and one of them was Inglewood. For some reason, this club did not really get off the floor very much, but it led to the founding of Inglewood Guys and Dolls, which actually is the the largest and most viable black club in the area. And later on, another club started. By the time I started dancing, 1994, there were 4 predominantly black clubs in the Los Angeles area, as well as at least 2 clubs in, right around that area that were integrated, which were the LA Bachelors and Bachelorettes affiliation, and also Pioneer 8s. And in addition, there were about 5, 6 black callers right in the neighborhood, including my good friend Sylvester Nealon, who was one of the founders of the Guys and Dolls, and as well as Art Daniels and his son Art Jr. There was also a Bob Nelson and one other guy that right now I'm drawing a blank on his name. But anyway, we had others also in the area. There was Andy Rollinson, and also Johnny Preston lived in Southern California. I believe he still does. And so it grew, and as this is when I started to get into square dancing in 1994. I started in September 1 week with the Dudes and Dames. My friend Sylvester was teaching it. The following week, I enjoyed it that first week so much. The next week, I went to a second club in which he was also teaching. And later on, one of the guys one of the angels in the class said, "Hey, there's this club called Pioneer 8s over here that's also having a class." So very shortly, I was taking 3 square dance classes a week, and looking forward to the weekend being over so that I could get back to square dancing. And so this is the way I went. I went on into advanced, and eventually, 1998, on a Monday in October, I started taking C1. Well, that following Saturday, I entered Lee Schmidt. If you remember the late Lee Schmidt, he's known as the Crawdad Man, was a teacher, a caller teacher in the Los Angeles area who taught very many callers around the area. And he was starting a class, so I joined that. And I believe that even though it was sort of difficult, it was very beneficial learning challenge and learning to call at the same time, because it helped me to see the calls a lot in a lot different way than I was seeing them at the time. And so I went on, and then I joined, when I graduated from his class, I joined CALLERLAB and began calling around the area. I first participated in a demonstration actually when I was in beginner class. I got invited by Guys and Dolls to participate in a demonstration in which we took a square to a senior citizen party. And it was good for them to see, people who looked like them, who also had some of the music that they were listening to. The music is one of the aspects that is very important to I think to the non-square dancing population. The same problem that the general population is having in recruiting new dancers, it's happening in the black community as well. We are now in Los Angeles down to just one remaining club. As of March, the first Friday in March, the other club that was still in existence had its last dance, because they were no longer able to getting people to come in and join in square dance. But one of the things that I think is that we have to change the image of square dancing. When I started, I had no problems. I've always been the type of person, if it's something I like, I walk in and try it, and I try to keep an open mind about things. But some people get intimidated when you walk into a room, and first of all, the people don't really, the saying, look like you. Then you see these fancy costumes that seem to be very expensive. That's also an intimidation. And then you hear the music. Oftentimes it's the fiddle, and even today we still you go out and do demonstrations. We will use a lot of the the old time square dance music, which we should be using the newer music. If you listen to last year's session, Clark Baker spoke of a caller in Chicago, Sandra Bryant, which I'm sure many of you know. was a friend of his, and he talked with her. Well, she's a friend of mine also, and I used her as a resource. Sandy gave me some really interesting points. When she's working with the black clubs in her area, not only does she try to use music that they're familiar with, she uses the actual music. In other words, she will use music from Michael Jackson to the OJs to the to the Spinners, Earth, Wind and Fire, and she will actually use their original music with the vocals. I know some callers don't like to use music that has vocal going on behind them, but as Sandy mentioned, when you listen to the round dance cuers, they're using music that often has the words are being sung. The clogging prompters do the same thing, as well as the line dance people. So if they can do it, I think we can do it too. It's as long as the music has the 4/4 or even the 2/4 beat. I think we can work with it, and and this is one of the things that you have to do to attract people of non-square dancing communities that are not involved in the square dancing community. Another thing that she said is that we should try to get involved with some of the tech companies when they have their retreats. They often go away for a week or two maybe, and what they'll do is bring in entertainment, and for the evening sessions, instead of still doing their discussions on what they're trying to achieve, they'll have free time for these. And square dancing is one of the things that we might be.
I want to dovetail on what Buddy said there about the about the teaching aspects of this thing. When you're coming to a dance and you're calling a dance, you don't know who's showing up at the dance until they actually walk in the door. It's one of those things. Rarely do you get.
I thought that was somebody in our room.
So when you have it out there, you have a floor of dancers, and you're calling. And one of the things we often talk about doing is just sussing the floor. And we call it first.
Somebody's wireless
out,
mic
what do these people
is
know
feeding,
or don't know?
probably
right? So we kind of
feeding
do a
in.
sussing
Yes.
of the floor. We call that first
But
tip.
I'll see if I can talk over them. I just had a little bit more to say.
Over here,
Sharon and I did a retreat a few years ago, and which involved a group of Asian American Methodist teenagers. They had a recruit. They do this recruit every year. They alternate between Southern California and Northern California, and the 4 or 5 days that they're up there, they bring in different entertainments. And we were one of them, and what we did square dancing, we did line dancing, and we also actually put on music and just let them have fun.
Clearly, one of them could be age. They could be just people who are learning to dance at an older age, where they actually get.
Okay, you still hear me? Okay. Oh.
What if we need our wireless? Test. So if we have it on, we're overriding him. Maybe.
Is there a way to change the frequency of the wireless, and then you won't have the interference of the other one?
Yeah, oftentimes they do have two frequencies to them. Okay. Well, just a little bit more about it. So these tech groups do this, and this is one way that we might be able to get more people in. I know it's hard. When before we started, I heard a gentleman was talking about just having moved to the North Carolina area, and he said there were no. There didn't seem to be any gay square dancers in the area, as well as any minority square dancers, and so that's a problem when you're trying to recruit from populations and you don't have a source available for them. I'm not sure what you can do about that. If the closest you might get, you might invite some in to come along and see if it can help out, just to get it started. And so in summation, I would say that one of the things that we have to well, let me put it this way: the adage that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, we're seeing that people think our costumes are very expensive or intimidating. So maybe we should do demonstrations at malls where we just have people, dancers in normal clothes. That's something that may help. Definitely the music. We ourselves like the music, but we have to remember that we're trying to attract people who don't like this music, and it's even an enhanced or in spades in the black community. Country music is definitely not a big thing, even though I like it. Sharon likes it very much. She's country from way back. But most African American people do not like country music, so that's going to be a problem if that's what you get up and start playing first off the bat. We need to give the people something that they can identify with. So that's about all I have to say right now. Oh, I'm sorry. There was actually one more thing. I think that's why I have her sitting over here. In the LA area, we have community colleges. There's some places they're called junior colleges. Often these colleges have what are called community services programs, and the community services programs are generally non-accredited classes where people have an interest in something. They'll send a proposal, they'll get it started, and they'll do it for maybe 8, 10, 12 weeks or so. And it's a good way to get people interested in. I know quite a few people who, from back in the 90s, first got their introduction to square dancing from doing a community college at Los Angeles City College, which was taught by a square dancer by the name of a square dance caller by the name of Lloyd Lewis. And from there, they went on. It was a whole family, practically a family, went on and became square dancers and round dancers because of this. So this is another thing, and it's various ways. I don't know if other community colleges in different areas have this, but it's something that you should look into, and it's something that you might be able to get into if you get the student population interested. Then you might have a chance of growing the activity. So I think that's about it for me, Kris.
Thank you, Henry. So next up, Corben Geis, who has handouts, which I will come around and pass out once I get.
We'll pass out crayons too, so you can color the pictures. Henry's talking about the schools, and when you get these handouts, the two diverse groups that I like to work with are the handy-capable clubs, and then I have that broken down into several categories, as well as the school. So what I'm going to do is, since you did the schools, I'm going to talk about the schools. One of the things I really like to do is get a new mic. Going into the schools, I get tons of questions from callers and dancers, a lot. And one of them is, how early do you go? I go into the preschools. I really do. I do simple Simon Says type stuff just to get them listening. I don't have them square dancing. I do musical chairs. I do lots of stuff with movement and music. We'll do circles. We'll do stars. Well, maybe they are square dancing. But I have a lot of callers that call me up and say they want me to come and do a preschool. There's no way I'm going in there. And my whole thing is, I'm not turning anybody down. Square dancing is so important, even to the little ones. One of the main things to do with the schools, now I'm going into elementary schools and the junior highs and senior highs, is you're not really going into the schools to get members to your clubs. And a lot of callers in my area, I'm from near Penn State, near the center of Pennsylvania. And some of the callers in our area think it's a waste of time to go into the schools because you're not going to get them into your club. I don't ever go in with that attitude. My attitude of going into the schools is planting the seed, because my parents, who are baby boomers, tell me horror stories of when they went into school and they had to square dance in gym class. So my idea is, and my calling coach, who is basically my neighbor, is Tom Miller. Most of you know Tom. He's only about 15 minutes away. He has a high school program. I have an elementary program, and we try to complement each other about that. One of the things that callers and dancers ask is, how do you get into the schools? Since it's such a different group of, a diverse group of kids, and everybody learns in a different way. You know, I'm an art major, so I'm very visual. Is if you write a letter to the school and saying what you do, and these people say, I sent a letter of this great thing, you know, and I sold it. Here's how you can sell it too. They love this stuff. Sell it that I'm coming in to teach square dancing. It's not only a gym class, it's a music class. It's a history class. It's a math class. Oh, my heavens. They love you right away. And there's more? Okay, wait for the... Okay, bring it around. There's lots more.
I'm trying to think how to put it now.
Okay, write it down and send it to me. But I don't just write one letter. I write the same letter, but I send it to the principal. I'll send it to the music teacher. I'll send it care of the guidance counselor. I'll send 4 or 5 letters to a school to get me in there. Now, I've been teaching arts in my area. My real job, by the way, is I work in therapeutic activities at the Veterans Home. So when you see the part on the other page about the wheelchair dancing, I'll get into that. Getting in, I'm already kind of in our area into the schools. They go, oh, here comes Crazy Corey. He's going to do something. It's going to be art. It's going to be music. It's going to be dance. It's going to be fun. Last week I was really busy with St. Patrick's Day, and I didn't call any square dances. Well, I did, but I didn't tell it was square dance. And I did trios. And if you've ever gotten the book or seen the book, Dancing for Busy People, there's an easy website to remember. It's D for dancing, 4 as in the number. Do I have it written down? BP, dancingforbusypeople.com. It's Cal Campbell and his wife. They have tons of great stuff. I did all this type of Irish. We did the Virginia reel. Actually, we didn't reel. It was a Virginia no reel. We did trios, mezcalanzas, which are 4x4s, Sicilian circles. And never once did I say we were square dancing, and they had a blast. I had boys dancing with boys. Okay, guys, you're going to do the stars over here, and the girls are going to do it over here. Who can do it better? You know, nobody ever asked, do I have to hold her hand? Because I had the boys up against the girls, boys do-si-do, you know, 3x3 do-si-do, and it was so much fun. And the principal actually said, you were square dancing, weren't you? I said, shh. Yeah, we were. You get into the junior highs, that's when I usually charge the schools double. Because of puberty, and you have attitudes when you get into. One of the funniest things I think I've learned it over the years was in working in personal care, I have access to rubber surgical gloves. And I used to take the gloves into, have you ever heard of taking the gloves into the schools? So they don't have to hold their hands, they can put the gloves on, and you know, I won't get cooties and stuff like that. Senior highs are a lot of fun too. But hey, he was talking about the colleges, and one of the ways I get into the colleges is a lot of them have a student affair and higher education group, and they're always doing stuff like diversity days. And I'm near Penn State, I'm near Pitt, back in my area, and I've gone in and done rodeo nights and different stuff like that. And I've learned with the school groups, they love the hard stuff. Like when I go into the colleges, and you might have the same thing, I really get to do stars and circles. They want to know how to do the grand square, and they're really smart. So I don't start with, like, you know your audience. As callers and callers partners, you all know that. You know your audience. There was one time I went in and I just did a whole evening of grand square variations. You know, we were doing a grand parade, the grand spin, and all different types of stuff, and they really liked it. So that's with the school groups. You know, in all the years I've been going into the schools, I actually have gotten people signed up for my clubs, but I never really teachers who would see it. They'd be, hey, it's really cool, you know, and I have one of my math teachers who taught me how to square dance 100 years ago comes in and he watches me call, and I can't call mathematical at all. I'm very art related. I look at the guy wearing the red and the guy wearing the blue and the guy wearing the yellow, and I got to get these guys back. That's how I do it. On to the handy capable groups. If you want to, at any time, just YouTube wheelchair square dancing, and I think my video is one of the first one that comes up. You want to talk about a different group of very, very special people who really don't get to see square dancing, the handy capable groups. If you love square dancing, the handy capable groups, has anybody seen the handy capable groups? Have you ever had the opportunity, God bless you, had the opportunity to work with them? If you love square dancing, they really, 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 really love square dancing. And it's my favorite, and Kris introduced by saying it's my favorite group. Do you know why that's my favorite group? No politics, no cliques, and they love Yellow Rocks. They are the happiest bunch of people, and their problems are some. You think you're having a bad day? Call for the handy capables. Or if you don't want to call, go in and dance with them. I sometimes have the headset on, which is kind of like a sobriety test for me. I got to call and dance at the same time. Of course, it's easy stuff, so the easier stuff's harder, I think, you know, whenever you're trying to call. But what a fantastic group of people to work with. Now, wheelchair square dancing, most of the ones that I do, because I work in personal care, is there's somebody pushing the chair. There's somebody maneuvering the chair. You know, we don't even really do full squares a lot. We do mini squares. Because when you go in, I go into a lot of nursing centers, personal care homes, you have about this much room that we have in here. So I don't have the luxury of doing that all the time. I don't take a lot of angels with me when I go into the schools and when I go into the homes and centers and facilities. Not that, like, if we're going in to do a demo, they love the kids really seem, the younger kids love the square dance attire, and the older folks kind of like it too. But it's hard to get a square dancers anymore to come and do a demo. So I teach people, okay, you're on the staff, you're a volunteer. Oh, come here, I'm going to show you how to do this. You want a great program? You want people calling you? Do some intergenerational programs. Get some of these school kids to go into the nursing homes and push and maneuver the wheelchairs. I can't tell you how many guardians, parents, teachers, they'll want to do service hours. The kids have to do community service. And these school kids dread going into the nursing homes because we got to do bingo. We got to call bingo. We got to sit with them for bingo. Or they do some other activities that I've seen over the 20 years being in personal care. But they have a blast for this intergenerational program when you get the school kids involved with the folks in the nursing home. Because if you want to win the young and the young at heart, if you want to, I don't want to say chronologically gifted. Can I say that? Hey, that's politically correct. They love three things more than anything: music, kids, and animals and pets. I figure 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Sean and his dad, Scott, have a horseback riding square dance group. Have you ever seen the equestrian? It's amazing. Here a few years ago, and they don't teach us in collar school. I got a phone call from a therapeutic horseback riding group. And if you've ever seen their Ghost Riders, right, is the name of your cool. If you've ever seen their group, they're on the horse dancing, and everybody's on horseback. This place called me up and they said, we want you to come in and call for this group of autistic children. I'm telling you what. Whoo, man, Niagara Falls. If you can imagine, you got the horse, and then you got the child on top. And it's funny, the first time I went in, the kids were all wearing helmets. I'm thinking, I'm not that bad of a caller. But that was so they didn't fall off. Okay, and then each kid and horse has somebody out front leading them. And then on each side of the horse is a spotter. So I'm like, wait, horse 1, kid 2, guy in front 3, 4, 5. I got 5 people, or 5 things acting as one. And they wanted a square dance. And they had 4 horses, and they had lots of volunteers. And I'm walking in going, what in the heck am I doing? Why'd I take this booking? I ended up not charging. I don't charge for a lot of my handicapable stuff. I do charge to go into the schools because that's I got this money. I got this arts grant. Woo! But if you want to see, I have something at YouTube. It was the group I used to work with was called High Hopes, like Frank Sinatra's song. If you wheelchair or horseback riding, High Hopes, you can see what we were doing. We don't do do-si-dos. I mean, that would be wow. We do single file to the promenade to the left, to the right, up to the middle and back, maybe pass-throughs and U-turn backs. And the timing is all over the place. I mean, you're not going to have the timing, even with the kids doing if I'm calling to an automatic, the scooters, you see Bear Miller running around into the scooters, I had a square of them. That's a totally different timing than with people maneuvering the chairs. You could just call do-si-do, and while they're doing that, you can go get a coffee and come back. They might still be doing it. So don't worry about timing. The last one that I have a really interesting group. I'm sure some of you have got the fun badge or the fun dangle for dancing in a swimming pool. I can't believe these people keep calling me back. And I'm always scared to death to get with all my electronic stuff going near the water. But there's an aerobics group at our YMCA, and every one of them's a lady. And of course, we dance in the shallow end. It's a cartoon right there, dancing. But they love the square dancing. And you want to talk about a workout in the swimming pool, and they're used to, even the aerobic instructor says, where in the heck do you find time to, I says, this isn't mine, they've been doing this for years. And you know, just think of circling left to the current, then you're circling right, there goes the current, you know. And at one time we had them doing all types of calls. For the diverse groups, if you think about it long enough, you can come up with the most unique audiences that you wouldn't believe that would absolutely enjoy square dancing. The questions and stuff I have on the back, there are some questions, of course, and some of them are more statements. But my email is on there. Anytime you want to call me with ideas. Kris, you want to open it up for questions? Or do you have to add anything to add?
I do want to open it up for questions, and I'm interested in what people are interested in about increasing the diversity in square dancing. What is our goals, and what would we like to do? Right. State your name.
My name is Bob Farnell. I've called in England practically a third of the world. One thing I will point out, I use 3/4 and 6/8 time for square dancing. It's different. It makes people skip. It makes them happy. It's difficult to call in waltz time, but it's possible. But now I go on to the point I was thinking of earlier on. I had half a square that were a family in 1968. They took lessons. We took 2 years for lessons. They graduated mainstream. They had children. They brought their children to learn square dancing. Their children got interested in girls and boys. They went out, got married, brought their children. I had 3 generations dancing one after another at the same club. But I don't know what I did right. They said it was an exercise in teamwork and in morals. That was square dancing in the days gone by. And I don't see the teamwork anymore. When I'm out there, I like to see dancers working as a team. If I've got I've had 6 dancers in a square, just graduated mainstream, and because they've got the pigeon wing formation, they've got through all the plus list and the A1 list with no problems. I was just a touch on the hand will turn them into the right position. If they're dancing with their hands by the side, they're dead in the water. But to me, square dancing has been my life.
Thank you. So, yes, Bill.
Bill Boyd from Florida. What I'm interested in is we have a large gay community in Central Florida, and we had a gay caller come in and tried to start a club, and it failed miserably because at the same time he advertised for the gay dancers, some straight dancers came in, and it seemed to turn the gay dancers off. And I want to know, with that population, and several of my wife friends that she used to work with are gay. We go to their house on occasion. I can't get them to square dance. I tried. I would like to start a gay square dance club in Central Florida, and I don't know how to attract them since JR couldn't do it when he was there, and he still lives there. But as you said, how do I get that thing going?
I think, you need to have a critical mass. You need to have, like, when the people would go around the country, like the guy coming to Albuquerque and starting a club, he would get, 8 people together, friends, and teach them to dance, so that then when he would advertise for more people, he already had a group there, so that enthusiasm would be there, so that they would know this is already a successful group. So you need to, I think, get a core group right away. You can't just advertise it and hope that 1 or 2 people come out. It's just that's not going to work. And then, if you can bring in early on a caller who is known and sort of charismatic with that group, that can really help to build enthusiasm. There is a friend of mine who's started a women's group in one of the mobile home places in Apache Junction. And she is learning to call so that she can do that. I came in early on and called for them, and they loved it. They had a great time, because obviously I'm an experienced caller. And so that has kept some of the momentum going. Now they, of course, are all leaving right now, because the weather's getting hot. But she's hoping that next year she'll be able to have 2 groups going. One of the people who are really gung-ho, the former PE teachers and such who really want to dance, and the other of people who are taking more time to learn. But it looks like it's going to be very successful. But she had a group already there. I would think someplace like the Villages in Florida. I know that there are a bunch of gay people there, and if you could tap into, get a group going there where there are already people with leisure time who want to dance, that would be a good thing. If you could bring down some people, there's obviously a Southern Florida group and a Northern Florida group, and get people coming down together. So, it's that chicken and egg thing. You've got to, have people there to get people. So
I work in the medical field and in the art field, so a lot of my close colleagues are gay, and I've tried numerous times to tell them about square dancing. And the one thing that they don't have time, like everybody else, they don't have time. But the one thing that did catch their eye or their ear was when I talked about the theme dances. I said, we have so much fun with theme dances. And most of them were like, that's awesome. I said, hula dances, and I said 50s dances, and I said, that's just the... but when I talked about the themes, I said, so many... And the Wasca Festival was just this weekend up in the D.C. area. They theme the heck out of that thing. They just have so much... And it was classic television was their theme. And this I know because Tom Miller says, I'm Saturday morning cartoons, and I need to borrow about a dozen of your neckties. that have Scooby-Doo and stuff on. But I remember talking to some of the guys, and they said, yeah, I like the themes.
At convention, along with the diversity tips that I was talking about, where we have people of color and Pacific Islanders and such, we also have theme tips. And you might, get the word around. We have the leather tip, the bear tip, the kilt tip, the munchkin tip for short people, the redwood tip for tall people. We celebrate our differences. So,
hey, I just want to add on this kind of I got a bunch of these. If any of you want to take them back, and you know people in your area. But at 5:15, Tom Miller and I are doing a Birds of a Feather. Pretty much on the Handicapables, because this is the year they're having their Handicapable National Convention. They have one every 2 years on an even number year, and it's down in Bill Boyd's neck of the woods. It's a little south of you. It's in St. Petersburg, Florida, at the end of July, and they're always looking for callers. So I'll have a bunch of that at 5:15 at the Birds of a Feather. Any other questions?
Yeah, other questions? Randy.
Actually, I have a question for Henry, because I am part of a group in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and I'm originally from the Northeast, and I'm used to having integrated clubs, and we're looking to reach out to the African American community and get them involved in the activity. Do you have any suggestions?
Okay. The one thing that I could think of is, if you can find a caller who will come down and maybe go into some of the out of the norm groups, and maybe have a Westerns Day, because one of the things I know that a lot of people in our area sometimes like to do this, where they'll have a Western themed day where people, dress in cowboy hats and boots, and this is one thing that you might, be able to do for a one-nighter. If you could, get a caller, get with a group and have them come in and start, Mike Seastrom used the term team dancing. Instead of using square dancing, for right off the bat, if you heard, Corben says he doesn't even use the term square dancing. Sometimes it just turns people off. So, maybe you could do something like this. It would be hard. I've lived in an urban area all of my life, so to be in an area where I don't find many black people is something that I'm not all that familiar with, but I would think this would be one of the ways you could do it. Western Days theme, rodeo type, one-nighter type thing to get it started.
Yeah, what about marketing to a church or something like that? Are there churches down there that, that might be a way of doing it? I don't know. It seems like you have to get a group, somehow find a group that wants to learn to square dance, that you could convince to learn to square dance. And then once you've got that, then their friends can go out. They can get their friends involved.
Well, one of our dancers reached out to the NAACP and talked to them, and they were saying, well, we're interested if you can come up with a historical basis. And one of the things that we did in our research is we found out that African Americans being callers goes back to the very early 1800s. It's not a new thing at all.
So there you go.
So
that would certainly draw them. I would believe that would help it. And like you said, that's something that I forgot to mention about the churches. We do quite frequently do exhibitions and demonstrations at churches. And a large part of the membership of our club right now are from various churches that we've done these exhibitions at.
Has anyone had any? My name is Claudia from Calgary. Has anyone had any experience with getting involved with immigrants coming over? Like, they take the English as a second language classes. There's a whole organization there. Has anyone had any experience with that, getting into that?
I'm wondering if some of our callers who call in Europe might have some input on that, because they attract people who square dancing is not their cultural background, and in Germany and various countries. So that's one of the things I was interested in. Anybody here have an
When I was 17, I had the opportunity to go to the former Soviet Union. There was a group of Russian folk dancers that came to central Pennsylvania. And a year later, the host families got to go over. This is back in the Gorbachev days. This is still hammer sickle days, right? And we as the host families were thinking, they just performed this wonderful folk dance. It was beautiful. And after they did this performance, when they were in stateside, they showed us how to do it, and we were all just having a good time. Now, on our return trip, we were thinking we got to do something fun for them. So they said, Corey, why don't you teach us how to square dance? And I said, hey, that'll be a lot of fun. I was 17, and I taught a group of non-dancers how to dance. And I'll never forget it. We were actually taking photographs of us dancing in Red Square. Ugh, that was kind of spooky. But and it was fun. But I'll never forget the Russian kids, and that we were all teenagers, but they absolutely loved the Americans with their. This is back in Paris, I can't even say it anymore. Glasnost, what you said, and all of us kids were getting together, and I'm thinking, how can we be enemies? We were having so much fun, and we were dancing, and music being the international language. So here I am teaching, and they spoke much better English than we did, and I'm teaching a group of Russian kids how to square dance, and it seems like I taught 7 or 8 calls just in they wanted to learn more. They wanted to learn more. And they kept calling us cowboys. I remember when we were over there. We were the cowboys. So that was, a big thing. But they absolutely wanted to know more, and they were yearning to learn from us. So if you have the opportunity with an immigrant group, they were so smart too. They ate everything that we fed them. I'm just like, I got to give them more. I don't know if that even answers your question, but seems like the foreigners really, really like square dancing. And they do it better than us, too, from what I read a lot.
Last year, Clark read a letter from Cal Campbell talking about how his experiences with diversity in the Southwest. And he talked about Native American and Hispanic people, and he and his wife were very interested in their dancing. So they went to their dances and experienced their dances, and then as a relationship grew, they would talk about square dancing, and it was like a mutual thing. I like your kind of dancing, you might be interested in my kind of dancing and trying that. So it's a two-way street. We can't just say everybody should come to square dancing because we're the best. There are all kinds of different dancing, and if we're interested in other people's dancing, like the Russians did the demo and things like that, then it becomes more mutual. It becomes a relationship, and I think that's a good thing. One of the things in Albuquerque is I dance with contra dancers. I'm a contra dancer as well as a square dancer. And we've had people from contra dancing come over and start square dancing because, we're building relationships. And we've also had people from square dancing come over and start contra dancing. So, it's a two-way street, I think, in getting people involved in square dancing.
The other avenue you might want to take is the part where I have in here about the colleges. Yeah. The Student Affairs and Higher Education Departments for the Diversity Days. That's the only other time that I was the American dance. And then there was the Germans had the German shoe plotters dancing, and the Irish, and I've done several of them where they have foods and stuff and cuisines from the different countries. And it was growing up Catholic. It was like Stations of the Cross. You'd go to this and you go to this and you go to this, and everybody just seemed, they didn't want line dancing. They didn't want, you know, how this was back in the 90s. I'm thinking when line dancing was in its heyday. They wanted to learn how to square dance because they wanted to do what the cowboys were doing. So I don't know if that might get you in calling the colleges.
Okay. Yeah, Henry? This one? Yeah, give him that one. Going back here.
One other thing, if you happen to make contact with these groups, it is very important to maintain the contacts. Don't just make it a one-time thing. Try to get back the next year. If it's say a church group having a bazaar or something and they invite you, try to get back the next year, or see if there's another church in the area that might want to have the same thing. But repeat. We can't always go in thinking we're looking for people to join our clubs. We should be more concerned with just trying to get more people square dancing, period. And then once that happens, maybe the clubs will start to build again. But we need to build the activity itself.
Bob Farnell, originally from England. I used to call one-night stands over there what we called one-night stands. You call them fun nights. And I had a group of builders and architectural engineers. We had a ball out by the side of a mill stream with about 12 squares dancing on the grass every year. Then they found somebody that did it cheaper, and they came back the year after. But fun nights in Europe, in England in particular, you can have as many as 1,000 people out there square dancing. Some of them will come to you and ask, where can we learn this? You will never see them at a square dance. That's what I don't understand. They love a one-night stand. They'll come to a one-night stand twice a year. Most of them will be there for that one-night stand. They'll be there the next year for the 2 dances you have. Why can't we get them into square dancing? And the other point I wanted to add, there is nothing more satisfying than to call and teach handicapable dancers and having a live band behind you.
Okay. All right. One thing I wanted to mention in doing some reading about dances and dance forms. Last year, Clark read something from Harlan Kerr, who talked about, he'd talked to some people about diversity, and he talked to one Hispanic young man about image of square dancing and who might square dance and stuff like that. And he talked about Cubans. If you're in an area with Cuban dancers, the one of the dances that they do is called, this was not from Clark, but it's something that I know from my folk dance stuff, was called Casino Rueda. And it is actually a called dance, a called mixer. So it's salsa dancing, mix, and they're dancing, and there's a caller who's calling out various moves, and then they change partners, and then the caller will call some more moves, and they change partner. So it's a kind of an extemporaneous called mixer. And, people who do that kind of dancing, if you were interested in that kind of dancing and went and learned it, and then you might be able to, talk about square dancing, because it's a similar kind of thing and might exercise a similar part of their brain and what they like to do. So that was just a thought.
You're going to do that at Zesty Contra tonight, right?
Yeah, right. No, I don't know how to do it. I did it once at a workshop, but it was fun. Great. So,
that's all I got.
Anything else? Any other comments? Did you get what you were interested in? If there's anything we can do? All right, thank you for coming, and have a great lunch. Thank you, Corben. Thank you, Henry. Appreciate it.
And let's have a big hand for Kris for moderating.